So on a vehicle like this, or on any vehicle really, there's only a couple things that'll hold this engine in place.
Oh, you mean your poor work ethic and bad weather?
Yes. I mean, wait, no, not that. No, that's part of it, but not the entirety of it. Hello and welcome back. I'm your humble host, High Lord Fox, and this is High Lord Fox's garage. And we're currently not in my garage. We're over at Car Guy Dave's as I'm working on Lady Sif. For those of you just joining us, or if you haven't watched the other videos, Lady Sif is my 1985 Pontiac Grand Prix 400 small block Chevy swap. This project is basically to get what is a field car, as it's been sitting in the field for the last 15-20 years, back on the road and driving hopefully up to daily driver spec. I've got a long road ahead of me for that. But first, what we're going to start working on today, on the first actual real project day, is the engine. So here we have the real meat and potatoes of this project. Is a 1974 Chevy B-Wagon. So I'm presuming it's like a Chevelle or one of those station wagon-y cars. 400 small block Chevy. That's that bad boy down there in what was repainted Chevy-ish red. It's not the original color and definitely needs to be repainted. As you can see, it does need a lot of work, and there's a lot of stuff connected that needs to be pulled off so we can get this engine out of here. The freeze plug on the driver's side, I believe it's the front one or the rear one, is currently leaking, and we need to get that resolved before we can even think about making this a daily driver or even a driving vehicle. So I got to get that fixed before I can even worry about it being useful in any real way. So while I may have retained my anime protagonist haircut, we have moved this car closer to our workshop, so I have access to things like air tools, which were slightly difficult to get to when I was in the middle of the field. So before you start on any kind of project like this, what you really want to do is identify points that are going to be a real pain in the ass, bolts to remove, nuts to remove, anything you should spray down with penetrating spray, such as today's WD-40, and anything where you don't want stuff falling down into the area where you're working, which is why we have the blower tool. So I'm going to put a little mask on, I'm going to get this all blown out, and then I'm going to start by spraying several of the important bolts, i.e. header bolts on both sides, with this so they're easier to get out and hopefully don't break off in my engine. So one of the things that doesn't come across on YouTube, both thankfully and unfortunately, depending on your case, is the smell. This smells really bad. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this whole insulation bit out because it is too torn up to be used, and it does smell, and it's been lived in and all sorts of stuff. So hopefully that'll take care of some of the smell, and it'll get it out of my way so nothing falls on me or falls on the engine or anything like that. At best, the remove stuff is fiberglass. At worst, it's asbestos, so you definitely want to have gloves and a mask. Also, probably long sleeve shirts so you don't have any exposed skin. Yeah, do as I say, not as I do. We're gonna take some penetrating spray. I'm gonna spray all of the header bolts. That way I ensure that they come out. And I'm gonna start spraying some of the other important bits too. So on a vehicle like this, or on any vehicle really, there's only a couple things that'll hold this engine in place.
Oh, you mean your poor work ethic and bad weather?
Yes. I mean, wait, no, not that. No, that's part of it, but not the entirety of it. For the most part, you're really held in by exhaust, which in our case is only minor because there is no exhaust past the headers. The transmission, so unless you're removing the transmission, you got to unbolt it because that's held into place. The body mounts, which there are 2 on this engine, and all the ancillary hoses and crap and everything, and wires and all that fun stuff, which is a lot of things, but I'm counting as 1 because depending on the engine, that may be cut off or easily removed. So what we're going to start with is we're going to start with all the ancillary hoses, water, cooling, wires for power. There's more hoses down here you can't even see. Any of the air hoses you need for vacuum and pressure. And once we have that cleared out and pulled away, the next step is going to work on getting the headers off and getting this front section off, because I can't pull the engine out with this fan in the way. And the fan is attached to the water pump, so got to pull all that off, and then I can lift this up and pull it out. So we're hopefully going to get started on that now. So as you can see, what I'm currently doing is taking as many photos as I can of the engine, still photos of as many parts as I can. So that way when I reassemble this, not only do I have video of me taking it all apart, I have still reference photos to use on all the things on the back, all the things on the front, orientation of brackets, which is very important, especially when you're dealing with a non-standard engine like this, as I'm using some brackets from the 85 and some brackets that came with the 74 engine. It's very helpful, very useful. Also, I don't really know if you can see it, but above me, above and around here, is one of those pop-up tent gazebo things. And those are very, very useful when you're outside and you're working in the rain or in the bright sun or adverse conditions, and just keeps the sun off you, keeps the rain off you, keeps the weather out. And keeps it not only off of you and your expensive recording equipment, but also off your vehicle so nothing gets wet and you're not working in the rain and the mud and stuff like that. So I'm going to take a bunch more pictures of this, and then we're actually going to get started by pulling this shroud off. That's going to be the first thing I do. So now I successfully managed to pull this top hose off, pull the top cover off, the bottom cover off, pop the hose down on by the water pump, completely not getting any fluid anywhere but the pan that I put down ahead of time. Now I can actually start working on pulling the radiator out so this won't hit the radiator on its way out. Alright, so our radiator is out. Pay no mind to these cooler lines that were running into it as well. Those are totally, entirely weren't connected at all, and I didn't spend time pulling those off because I forgot to before I started pulling it out the first time. So yeah, no, pay no mind to those. But now that that's out, I can then start working on the engine, and I'm probably going to have to wind up replacing this condenser core because it looks pretty mangled. And while I'm at it, let's go take a look at that radiator on the other side, because that's a little bit worse for wear. So we're going to have to replace that, but let's take a look at it first, shall we? Alright, so here we have the back side of the radiator. We have our bottom hose, we have the two spots where the coolers were installed, there and there. We have some sensors that aren't used, we have the cap up over there. I've got the drain valve over here, which is a little rusted, and got a little bit of corrosion, which is like, it's something to be interested in. You know, these aren't supposed to flake out like that. So that's something to be worried about, definitely. But if we flip this and look at the front side, oh boy, that's a lot of corroded fins out of there. That's a big issue. So we are going to have to replace this. To my knowledge, this is either a single or dual core radiator, and we're definitely going to replace this. I'm going to try and either get a 4-core aluminum radiator, which would be the best, or a 2-core radiator that has a fan already mounted on it. So that way I can switch this to an electric fan, because currently it has a clutch-driven fan. So that spins, ignore that. That spins and rotates the fan. So if I can get an electric fan for a decent price, I can replace this whole unit, and that'll free up a couple horsepower, because it won't be spinning the fan based on the water pump. It'll just be spinning the fan based on electricity, which does not require the engine to sacrifice any performance. So that'll be another performance gain you can get on these old engines. That down there is another one. That's where the manual fuel pump would be, but we put a bypass in, and this will have an electric fuel pump, which I will get to later. So with the radiator out, the next step is disconnecting more of these hoses and pumps and wires, and oh my. What I've got here is the speedometer cable. It goes into the dash, but as you can see, it's a little busted. So we originally got this replacement cable, but this is too short. So I am going to have to replace the speedometer cable at some point. I haven't decided whether I'm switching to an electronic based one where it's got the little speedo sensor on it and it spins around electronically, or if it's something where I'm just going to get another cable and jack it right in the transmission. That's to be determined. one fan. The little janky spring that's probably supposed to be in there, and as it heats up, the clutch engages, spins, and as it cools down, the clutch disengages. Relatively simple design. It's a very common style fan on the older ones. After scraping the hell out of my arm, I've applied a layer of tape to the front where the radiator sits because it's a little sharp and it keeps scratching my arm as I lean over and try and work on things. So a little bit of duct tape, a layer or two of Gorilla Tape actually. Shout out to who I'm using. There we go. Much better. All right, so I had to take a little bit of a break as it is hot as balls out. And for those of you who don't use the American system of units, hot as balls translates to roughly about 85 degrees Fahrenheit and KRF degrees in centigrade for you Canadians and Europeans and everyone else that's not American out there. And it's probably about a 60% humidity out. So I was completely drenched in sweat because it is hot. So I had to take a quick break, went inside, got a bunch of juice, went in, sat inside my air-conditioned car for about 20 minutes to cool off, and now I can get back at the engine. So what we did just a few minutes ago, it only took us like an hour of fighting with it, is we've managed to get this whole front side off. We took all of the spark plugs out and we disconnected the header on the right side. So this is now hanging loose. So the next thing is to do the same thing on the opposite side. And this is basically to check to make sure nothing crawled inside my engine and made a nest there. Make sure nothing's rusted shut in there, because we did lubricate it before it sat, but it's good to check. And then once we've checked the other side to make sure it's all clear, we can turn the engine over by hand, obviously, and make sure it properly cycles. And as long as we've done that, then the next two steps are finish disconnecting it from the torque converter and disconnect the engine body mount. So we've been at this for about 4 hours today. So I don't exactly know how far I'm going to get today, but my goal is to finish getting the other side disconnected, so header and spark plugs. I have an example here somewhere. Spark plugs. Get those out and get the bolts off the torque converter. So all I have to do later on this week when I come back is pull out 2 bolts, one on either side, disconnect anything else that happens to still be holding the engine in place, and rip the engine out. And then I'm probably going to do that on like a Friday, which gives me a full weekend to start tearing apart this engine, because it's really going to need that. I've got a new water pump, I've got a new oil pan on the bottom, I'm going to need a new harmonic balancer, I've got replacement one of these, I've got new chrome tops, I've got new gaskets everywhere, I've got a rebuild kit for this, I've got to get new distributor stuff. So it's definitely going to be a project, but this is a lot further along than it's been in almost 20 years, so enough wasting time. Let's get the other side apart. And disconnecting the other side is as easy as 1, 2, 3. You just take out the 4 bolts, take out the 4 spark plugs. We're going to probably have to take the starter out to get this side out, but you know, it's just super easy. You know, they're not in completely positions that are a pain in the ass to wrench around, and you don't have to use a wrench on the all the way one in the back because you can't get a ratchet on it. No, it's totally easy and simply and perfectly beautifully designed. Good job both Chevy and whoever designed those headers. We're going to actually finish up here for today. We have it pretty much 75%, 85% removed. We still need to do the engine mounts. I still need to get that header off, which requires taking the starter off. Distributor cap has to come off, and I have to unbolt it from the transmission. But once I've got all that, then it should lift forward and then out. But that's going to be a start of the day project because withering heat and high humidity just killed my work drive. So this is it for day 1. I'm going to start cleaning it up. Yeah. So this is it for day 1 of removal. I'm going to get some fogging oil because I probably won't be back to this for a couple days. So get some fogging oil and some paper towels. We're going to spray all the exhaust manifold holes, get that stuffed, and then going to put spark plugs back in the spark plug holes, cap everything else off so nothing gets in while it's waiting. And then the next day we start on this, pull it all out, and hopefully we'll get it out that day. So I'm High Lord Fox. This is High Lord Fox's Garage. Thank you for joining us on this adventure, and have a nice day.